All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's 8:30. I call this zoning committee meeting to order. Roll call, Kathy, please.
Ron Buckholz,
Present.
Bruce Paulson, Dawn Pettit,
Here.
Jesse Betcher, Tweed Schuman, Stacy Hessel. Thank you.
Okay, pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America. And to
one nation, under
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Statement of committee hearing procedure and statement hearing notice. The full statement of committee hearing procedure and document, including directions for individuals wishing to speak at a public hearing to be conducted at this zoning committee meeting, are available in front of this room next to the agenda for today's meeting. The statement of committee and hearing procedure document is hereby incorporated into record for the committee meeting. Any public hearing conducted at today's committee meeting has been published and is a Class 2 notice in accordance with Chapter 985 of the Wisconsin statutes in the Sawyer County Record and the Sawyer County Gazette as posted. Okay, approval of the December 17th minutes. They need a motion to approve, please. We have a motion by Mr. Betcher, a second by Ms. Hessel to approve. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Public comment. Please note, comment time is intended for general public comments, not comments relating to specific applications before this committee. Each agenda item requiring a public hearing will have its public hearing conducted just prior to the application being considered by this committee. If you wish to speak on a specific item, we encourage you to hold your comments until specific public hearing. Okay. Good. Is there anybody out there who would like to do the public comment? Okay.
All right, moving on. This is a public hearing in the town of Sand Lake, rezone number 22-001, owner Adam and Amber Smith, part of government lot 1, part of the northwest 1/4 of the northwest 1/4, and part of the southwest 1/4 of the northwest 1/4, and part of the southeast of the northwest 1/4, lot 1 of CSM number 1461, section 2739 north, range 9 west, 18.39 total acres, zone RR1. Purpose of the request is to rezone approximately 5.4 acres of the property to commercial 1 for a commercial storage building. As part of the staff report, again, looking to rezone 5.4 acres from RR1 to C1. The proposed rezone would result in conforming lot dimensional requirements. The purpose of this request is to have a permitted use within the commercial 1 zone district. The use as specified by the applicant is for commercial storage buildings. With the additional maps in the packet, the nearest C1 zone property in relation to this is approximately 6,000 feet away to the north along the County Highway E and F intersection with Highway 70. The future land use map for the town of Sand Lake shows this area as shoreline, which is indicated of a 1,000-foot buffering around any water bodies, which is as part of the town's comprehensive plan, still references the old lake classification system. Town of Sand Lake has approved the request, the requested rezone, as it would not create traffic or highway issues. There are a few other residential structures within the immediate area, specifically to the north of the subject property. This may be viewed as spot zoning, but spot zoning is not necessarily illegal because such zoning is not necessarily inconsistent with the purposes for which zoning ordinances can be passed. However, rezoning should be consistent with long-range planning and based upon considerations which affect the whole community. Therefore, spot zoning should only be indulged where there's public interest and not solely for the benefit of the property owner requesting the rezone. As part of the town board motion was approved. Robert Langham, town chair, Edgar Gregory, supervisor, George Scheidby, supervisor. was passed by Planning Commission, would not cause any traffic problems, signed Elaine Nyberg, Town Clerk. There was there were 7 opinion letters sent out, 2 were returned, 1 with objection, 1 with no objection. I have objections. The rezoning of the 5.4 acres south of our property line to commercial 1 to provide for the placement and construction of commercial storage buildings would negatively impact our standard of living. Such a commercial building would be out of place in a strictly residential recreational paradise, which we hold in high esteem. The noise, light, and site pollution it would bring to the area would not be welcomed. As the Smiths recently purchased the property for the purchase, they would have been wise to perform an environmental impact assessment before the investment. No less than 6 negative impacts can be assured with this plan to locate the area between other water and wetlands. That is signed Tarla and Jason Scott. I have no objections to this, Robert Langham. That is all.
Okay. All right, I need a motion to go into public hearing on rezone number 22-001.
Make the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Hessel and a second by Mr. Betcher to go into public hearing on rezone number 22-001. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. We are now in public hearing. Is Adam and Amber Smith available?
I have an Adam Smith here as a public hearing slip.
Okay, oh, all right. So you can come up and speak, sir. Give your name and your address, please.
Adam Smith, 3891N, County Road F, Stone Lake.
Is there anything you'd like to tell the committee?
Yes, so my name is Adam Smith. We did purchase this land not too long ago. We live just south of the land. We did purchase a total of, it's around 40 acres. This is a 18-acre plot that would be divvying down to roughly 5 acres for commercial building. As heard with the complaint, we're also avid outdoor enthusiasts, which is the reason we want to only zone a portion of this and leave the rest of that wooded. As far as the wetlands and the lake, it's actually on the opposite side of the road than the lake, so it would not have any impact on the wetlands. Also with the ability to build housing right there at this moment, building a commercial storage building would not be much different than looking at a house across the way. We're looking at building initially starting with 1 storage building, which would house mini storage for about 20 units, and then a boat storage facility as well. We feel there's a great need for that with all the surrounding lakes for boat storage, as well as with cabin goers and storing their items there.
Okay. Have any questions for him? Patrick?
Do you have any idea if this gets approved, who you would use for the construction of the storage facility? Are you going to do that yourself? Or are you going to contract out to somebody local, or do you have any idea on that?
We haven't necessarily looked into that yet, but yes, we would like to contract with someone local.
Ms. Pettit, you got any questions?
No, he answered it. I was wondering what they were going to use the building for, if it was going to be a commercial building just to store their outdoor rec vehicles, or if they were putting up something for the public.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Is there anybody that's out there that wants to speak in favor of this rezone? Is there anybody out there that wants to speak in opposition of this rezone? Okay, if none, I need a motion to come out of public hearing on rezone number 22-001.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mr. Betcher and a second by Ms. Hessel to come out of public hearing on rezone number 22-001. We are now out of public hearing. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries.
Discussion action for the town of Sand Lake, owner Adam and Amber Smith, legal description is previously read into record. This request is to rezone approximately 5.4 acres from RR1 to commercial 1 for a commercial storage building.
Is that it? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, committee, she's up to you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the rezone request number 22-001.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Betcher to approve rezone -22-001. And we have a second by Ms. Hessel. Any more discussion? If not, roll call, Kathy.
John Pettit,
No.
Jesse Betcher,
Yes.
Stacy Hessel. Ron Buckholz.
Yes.
Finding of facts. It would not be detrimental to ecology, wildlife, wetlands, or shorelands. It would not create an air quality, water supply, or pollution problem. And it would not be damaging to the rights of others or property values.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. These are for now conditional uses. This is a public hearing in the town of Hunter, conditional use permit number 22-002. Owner Tricia Smith, agent Cloud One Services LLC, part of the east one half of the northwest one quarter, lot 2, CSM number 7763, section 5, township 40 north, range 6 west, parcel 012-640052107, 7.78 total acres, zoned residential recreational 2. Permit is desired for the construction of a communication tower for high-speed internet as per section 17.2 parent B parent 2 of the Sawyer County zoning ordinance. As per the staff report, again, this is construction for a high-speed internet telecommunication tower with the new changes of Wisconsin chapter 66.04.04 mobile tower siting regulations included in the changes in 2017 and 2019. Counties are somewhat limited in the local regulations as long as the applicant or mobile service provider complies with the provisions and the regulations specified in 66.0404. So we do have a completed application. Those are attached here in the plans. I have reviewed the application and deemed it to be complete within 90 days of the completed application, which was on November 9th, 2021. A political subdivision shall complete all of the following, or the applicant may be considered the application approved, except as provided the applicant of the political subdivision may agree in writing to an extension. So review of the application to determine whether it complies with all the applicable aspects of the political subdivision building code, subject to the limitation of this section. Those have been tentatively approved by the Zoning and Conservation Department, including setbacks, floodplains, and then the other county zonings ordinances not subject to the limitations described in the staff report. Need to make a final decision on whether to approve or disapprove the application. You need to notify the applicant in writing of the final decision. And if decision is to disapprove the application, include in writing the notification of the substantial evidence which supports the decision. Other key notes to mention here, the proposed tower height would be 250 feet high and would be located 130 feet to the closest setback line. The applicant has provided a letter from a professional engineer indicating that even though the tower would be within the fall zone of a setback line, that the tower is designed to collapse within a radius less than or equal to 125 feet. If the committee accepts the engineering certificate of a greater setback distance of 130 feet from the setback line, it may not be imposed. The only other aspects I would have is possible conditions for the mobile tower siting, that the land use permit for the telecommunication facility is required. That land use permit has been submitted and is pending approval of this conditional use permit. Prior to issuing the land use permit, the applicant or the owner of the telecommunication facility shall provide a bond or irrevocable letter of credit. A copy of that permit bond has been received in the amount of $30,000, and that all other town, county, state, and federal laws are followed. As by action of the town board, motion was approved. Laura Rusk, chairman, Jim Dyer, supervisor, Kay Ryan, supervisor. No additional comments, signed Patricia Swayfield, town clerk. There were 4 opinion letters sent out, 1 were returned with no objections. I have no objections. Christine Latham. That is all.
Okay. All right. I need a motion to go into public hearing on CUP number 22-002.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Pettit and a second by Ms. Hessel to go into a public hearing on CUP number 22-002. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. We are now in public hearing. Is there a representative for this that wants to speak on this? I think that's the guy on.
It is.
Yes, Lee Larson.
Okay, Mr. Larson, you want to state your name and talk to the committee?
Yes, sir. I'm a independent contractor with Bug Tussle Wireless, Cloud One. And we are looking to fulfill a need for internet and possible additional providers to come on for co-location for cellular services in the future. Right now, this is a internet only broadband wireless. And there are some maps further down into the yeah, that's the map of the coverage. And then if you could scroll a little bit more, you'll see that there's additional maps for, so that's, if you go back up just for a second, go 1 page up. So that's the coverage of Bose Tower. And you can see the green colors, yellow. Yellow is obviously the highest speed, and green is very acceptable speed. And then as you get out to the blue colors, it does fade away, and that's partly because of trees and topography. And then if you scroll to the next drawing, and then go one more. I can't remember. I don't have it in front of me. Yeah, so there's the coverage map of the county for our towers that give reasonable coverage throughout the county, but there's quite a hole in the spot where we want to have, where we're proposing. So, and with COVID and people working out of their house, they come up for vacations. People are, we're using the internet more and more, and this is a nice fit for this area in Sawyer County. Any questions?
Any questions for him? Ms. Pettit, do you have any questions? Dawn, did you catch that?
Yes, I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, does anybody out there want to speak in favor of this CUP? Does anybody out there want to speak in opposition of this CUP? Okay, if not, need a motion to come out of public hearing on CUP number 22-002.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Betcher, second by Ms. Pettit to come out of public hearing. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. We are now out of public hearing.
This is the discussion action in the town of Hunter, conditional use permit number 22-002, owner Tricia Smith, agent Cloud One Services LLC. Legal description is previously read into record. This request is for a telecommunication tower for high-speed internet as per section 17.2, parent B, parent 2 of the Sawyer County zoning ordinance. Should be noted as, again, part of the potential conditions as part of the staff report. Again, we do have the land use permit on file. It's pending approval of the CUP. We also do have the permit bond amount, but also to follow all other county, state, federal laws. The one other thing I forgot to mention as part of the staff report, and I do want to get it into record, is they did also provide a letter for co-location as part of the state statutes. They need to first explore the options of doing co-location, be it that, can they implement some of their devices on other existing towers and still serve the needs of what they need. They provided a letter and that they cannot do that. There are no other towers in that area to provide this said service, so they are wanting to install a new tower as a class 1. So just get that in the staff report. That is all.
Okay. Committee?
I'll make a motion to approve conditional use permit 22-002.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Betcher and a second by Ms. Hessel to approve the CUP number 22-002. Any more discussion? Ms. Pettit?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, roll call, Kathy, please.
Jesse Betcher. Stacy Hessel. Ron Buckholz.
Yes.
Dawn Pettit.
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor.
Finding of facts, it would not destroy prime agricultural lands. It would not create traffic or highway access problems.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. New business?
Yeah, moving on to new business. I wasn't here last month, but it sounded like the committee wanted to see 2 working versions of the potential allowance of accessory structures on vacant property as part of the 4.26 exemption. And also, looking at the aspects of shipping containers, be it, shipping containers as other accessory structures. So before you have 2 working versions. And I guess, some additional information to share with you on this. I did have a district meeting yesterday, the Northwest District, so we get together with all other counties. Bayfield County and Sawyer County are the only counties that don't allow accessory structures on vacant property. Burnett does, Washburn does, Ashland does, Douglas does, Price does, Rusk does. So Sawyer and Bayfield are the only ones that don't allow it. Now, with that being said, Washburn is somewhat kicking themselves in the rear end in that they're wishing that they hadn't allowed larger accessory structures on vacant property because they're now experiencing a lot of garages that are being converted after the fact into living corridors. And that's something that is scary to a zoning administrator in that, those once B garages that are now turned into cabins never got the state code inspections for it to be a habitable structure. What does the well and septic look like? Was it assessed to be as a primary dwelling versus just a garage? That is some of the nightmare scenarios you run into when you start getting to larger sizes. And that was some forward thinking that I had as far as the implementation of the 144 square foot shed is, to keep these smaller and that they didn't turn into full living cabins. Now, can someone pop a bed in 144 square feet and sleep in it? Yeah, and that's really on them at that point. If we observe that, or we get complaints that someone's living in a 144 square foot shed, we will certainly address those. But I feel like at 144 square feet, there's a lot less of a likelibility that that turns into a full cabin versus something that would be 24 by 24, 576 square feet. So just to keep that in mind. Again, this whole aspect of this change, didn't specifically come from me, the zoning administrator. I didn't come out and say, we need this in Sawyer County. I'm going by what I hear from the citizens and delivering that information to you, the committee members, in case it doesn't get to you straight off the bat. Initially, it was more so the town of Ojibwa that wanted to see these types of changes. They held a meeting at their town board as far as, bringing this forward to their committee or to their citizens, asking whether or not they were in favor of these sheds. They sent in petition letters that they're wanting the allowance of these smaller sheds and or accessory structures on vacant land. And I probably have close to 20 petition letters in favor of implementing some type of change here at a county level. So again, you have the two working versions in front of you. I'll go through version 2.1 first, which really hasn't changed from what you've seen the last few months. We still have the initial language on shipping containers. Again, these are two separate issues, but they can be dealt with in the same change. The shipping container aspect is, getting some definitions and some actual verbiage into the ordinance that would allow shipping containers as accessory structures, but you wouldn't be allowed the shipping container as that exemption on vacant land. So this would be the scenario where you already have a house, and if you wanted a shipping container on your land that contains your house, you could apply and get a land use permit for a shipping container. Then we have the other aspect moving on to 4.26, where again, we would allow an exemption on vacant property and a land that would contain a minimum of 20,000 square feet of area, that you'd be allowed one accessory structure not to exceed 144 square feet in footprint area, less than 14 feet in height. No habitation is allowed in this exemption. All the setbacks would need to be applied for. You'd still need a fire number, site address for the property. You're only allowed the one, and that a shipping container is not allowed for that exemption. And then just some other cleanup as far as, the permit is required for this, and that in shoreline properties, any size structures are required. So 9.21 is a little bit of a cleanup. It really doesn't have bearing on the meat of the change. Then we move on to the version, I call it 3P, in that these were some of the changes that I'll just say that Phil Neese wanted to see, and I think it probably wasn't just Phil, but potentially talking with some other towns, that that this would be more palatable to some, that any shipping container would require a conditional use permit. So if you wanted a shipping container on your property, and this would be now moving forward, those that are already out there that had gotten prior permits of being an accessory structure would be quote unquote grandfathered or existing non-conforming, but any new ones that would be coming in, that you would need to apply for and be granted a conditional use permit for a shipping container on your land that contains a house. Also that this exemption for the accessory structures would not be allowed in platted subdivisions. And I do think Pat has printed off a map here to kind of show some of the platted subdivision areas for those that aren't familiar with where we have platted subdivision areas. I don't know if you want to talk about that map and kind of open it up and show them. The other thing is that there was a height change that individuals wanted to see, potentially a height of 10 feet. I had put in a height in mine as actually draft 2.1. That was one of the changes I made from last time, just because I don't think we want these as double decker sheds, because again, that would lead to, okay, well, let's put a loft area up top, a little sleeping area. Now we got our storage area underneath. So I think you do want to set a height limitation on these. Is 10 high enough? Is 12 high enough? Is 14 high enough? Is 16 high enough? I stuck an arbitrary number on 14, thinking that, maybe you had a side by side and it's, 7-8 feet tall, and you want a 10-foot door on this shed. And now you got a, 412 or 612 pitch roof. You might be over 10 feet in height. So I put 14 on mine. And I'll kind of just turn it over to Pat to kind of go through where we're seeing some of these, platted subdivision areas.
Yeah, following last month's meeting, and then it was brought up that in a platted subdivision, I just wanted to make sure that we were understanding what we were changing the ordinance, how it's gonna work for us administering an ordinance change. So I had Brian in our GIS office print a map so everyone can more or less see where our platted subdivisions are located in the county. Majority of them are in the Northwoods Beach area. Well, is Northwoods Beach. That is our largest platted subdivision. But you have numerous other ones throughout the county within county jurisdiction. I mean, the Wolf Island subdivision on Moose Lake. It would be kind of hard to tell somebody, yes, you could do an accessory structure on one side of the road where you're not in a platted subdivision, and then you go to the other side of the road, and just because the property was subdivided by a plat, not CSM or something like that. It makes it a little more cumbersome for us to effectively handle an ordinance and explain that to people.
And the red areas you're seeing are going to be village propers or city propers, which we wouldn't have zoning jurisdiction in. Again, the purple would be the platted subdivision areas. There's not a lot of coverage. I mean, specifically, again, the largest, as Pat indicated, is that Northwoods Beach, that area between Grindstone and Vancouver.
Yeah. Victory and the Victory Heights Peninsula. Sure.
I think I'll leave that up on this table here. If anyone wants to look at it in more detail.
Yeah, really, that's the only portion that that I wanted to make sure that we were also looking at effectively, not really just from a size standpoint or anything like that, that we're being even across the board for private property owners in the county.
Yeah.
One of my concerns is though, on these steel containers, is there's a lot of them out there already that are on vacant lots.
Yeah, and those would be illegal, regardless of whether or not we make this change. They're still illegal, and we're addressing them when we can.
Okay.
I know about 3 or 4 that I have on my desk that still are, waiting for corrective actions. Are there more? Absolutely.
Oh,
And one of the ones we just found the other day, just a little side note, there is now one permitted shipping container house out there,
oh,
where they met the dimensional requirements as specified in Sawyer County zoning ordinance, and they've gotten uniform dwelling code approval to build a shipping container house.
wow.
This is the one, Ron, that you let me know about.
That's the one?
That is the one
Okay.
on White Birch Lake Road there.
Yeah, when notice that front door in there,
Yep, they end up
Give
putting
it away, okay.
3 together and meeting the dimensional requirement. It's 26 by 40, 24 by 40. And that's what we issued the permit for,
Okay.
is so it meets everything in our ordinance. And I immediately called Monty Ehlers. He's the Town of Meadowbrook
Yep.
UDC inspector, and he said everything was in line with him. And I also made an additional call to Steve Boss and just to get his input on. And he said his only concern with a shipping container house is the snow load on the roof,
Oh, yeah.
which I think a shipping container can meet snow loads.
Yeah, cause when I talked to you about it, Pat, when I seen it, and I didn't remember it coming through my township for a permit also, but you told me there was?
There was.
Okay.
Correct. With an approval in a forestry one zone district.
Yeah.
And you can
Okay.
thank HGTV and Pinterest for those, but we get those questions all the time. They watch those shows and they're like, oh my gosh, a shipping container house, that seems so cool. And some of the ones you see maybe out in Arizona and California and stuff like that, they work. I mean, you could Google search it right now, shipping container house, and there's actually some kind of neat designs of some of that stuff. And really the Uniform Dwelling Code doesn't prohibit that, unique style of building. I even had an individual last year that wanted to build a fully functional treehouse house. Again, thank you HGTV. But they were going to put it up between 3 or 4 different trees, and it was going to be a 24 by 24 full living corridor treehouse. And really, our ordinance doesn't address that. As long as you meet the dimensional requirements as specified by habitable living area, and you meet the Uniform Dwelling Code requirements, so be it.
Okay.
Yeah, so again, you got the 2 versions. There's quite a few appearance slips here of other individuals wanting to speak on this. Regardless of what the committee wants to move forward with from here, none of this information has been fully and formally submitted to the towns. Generally, I mean, this is somewhat of an eggshell type of, ordinance amendment. Some are in favor, some are not in favor. Ultimately, I would like this committee to give me approval to reach out to the towns and send, a summary letter like we've done in the past for other, more contentious ordinance changes, and just explain the history behind this and explain, if we were to make an ordinance amendment, these are the aspects that we're looking at. So again, I guess at this point, I want you to hear from other citizens that, are come here today to speak on it. Take notes on it, but really need some direction from this committee as to, what you want to see. If we want to make any changes, what changes do you want to see? First I have is Phil Neese.
Okay, Phil, got 3 minutes. State your name, address.
Phil Meese, 7915 County Road E, resident of Sawyer County in town of Bass Lake. The version 3 was the one that, after talking to a number of towns and town officials and chairmen and so forth, had some concerns with the first versions. And so the things that I presented last month were ideas that came from them. A lot of them were a number of towns didn't want it at all. Some of the other towns could care less. So anyway, any of the change that was proposed last time was any shipping container, not just one, just any, and that should be any. That's my recommendation, and it needs to have town approval. The towns live with whatever these problems are, and so I really think, and of course, I've always been a town power guy. It's been very important to me to at least see that towns are determining their destinies and not being determined by some off the board thing. Going back down through the platted subdivision, and I talked about it last month, I think that it was very, very important. And you have an expectation if you are in a subdivision, and there are some, and there are, because of the problems of zoning, it's not my problem. They have plenty of time, I'm sure, to work it out. And most of the subdivisions, frankly, if you look at the picture in Sand Lake and the Bass Lake, there's some up in Round Lake too. But I think it's very important that we do not allow this in platted subdivision. I do have an expectation if I own property and I'm going to come and build a house, that I'm not coming 2 years from now and finding the thing scattered with accessory structures. The 10 feet comes from, I did a lot of research on 10 feet. And the 10 feet comes from, we need to, if we're going to do this, we need to do, if you hear what people need, the woman last month, she said, well, we want to put our lawnmower and a shovel and our chainsaw. And so having said that, I went out and measured a whole bunch of accessory structures, smaller ones. And 10 feet covers it. It provides a dome. It provides some storage for some things. I think we should provide the minimum that would be required to do this. And that's when I did the research and found that actually 120 square foot would be a much better number. It's a 12 by 10. And if you go, and that's what's called a medium-sized one. And accessory structure is like a garage. It's never big enough, guaranteed. No matter what size you build, it'll be filled. And so that's the reason I come back to 120. And I think to try to make this for the use that it's intended to be, for some minor storage things, not become a storage building. I think it's important to do those things. So those are my recommendations. I would recommend to you, I've talked to a number of towns, and I think, and town people, I think that version 3, if we change it to 120, probably would pass the towns. But anyway, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Bill. Next I have Mark Olson. Get 3 minutes, Mark.
You bet. Mark Olson, 15418 Durfee Lane, resident of Bass Lake. I'm here mainly on the storage containers. I agree with the revised revisions on that version 2, on the rest of it. But, you know, as a committee, you're charged with having the vision of the future of Sawyer County, and this committee should have the foresight to see that as other counties have regulated and put in restrictions to protect the public interest, Sawyer County is moving to allow and relax the very things that are moving to our county from the south and, excuse me, other states. This allowance of storage containers, along with, I'll just throw in a few things to make my example, camping in residential zoned areas and allowing garages on vacant lots, all undermine the purpose and intent of residential zoning and do nothing to protect the public interest of others in the residential area. Just to refresh the committee's memory, here are the purposes and intents of residential zone districts. RR1 17.1, this district provides for 1 family and 2 family year-round residential development protected from traffic hazards and the intrusions of incompatible land uses. RR 17.2 RR1, this district is intended to provide for residential development and essential recreational oriented services in areas of high recreational value where soil conditions and other physical features will support. RR2, this district is intended to provide for residential development and essential recreational oriented services in areas of high recreational value. To illustrate my point on residential areas, I invite the committee to come to the town of Bass Lake, a platted subdivision, and go to Circle Drive. This residential area has homes ranging from, I'll just say, $75,000 to over $1 million. So far, 3 year-round campers have moved into the areas next to them, with one actually over the last few years advertising to rent out their spot for somebody to come up and camp for the entire season. Now you want to give, in this area, storage containers in addition to campers. Your money's coming from the homes that are built there in a residential area, and having a storage container sitting next to $1 million house just doesn't make any sense in in protecting the public interest of the area, of the people in these zone districts. So I urge the committee just to kibosh, deny the storage containers. Our town is kind of a bellwether of what's around in the area for what's going to happen. Camping is taking off, and storage containers would only make it worse. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Good morning, I'm Jenny Chabek. I am here representing myself, although I am on the board for the town of Round Lake. I'm in complete agreement with the changes in the 3P version. Any shipping container needs to be associated with a conditional use permit with town approval. Frankly, the only benefit that I see personally about shipping containers is that it's a temporary thing. If there's a reason to put it in place, we would put and I'm not, again, not speaking for the board, just for myself, you would have the option of putting a time limit on how long that thing could be there. Otherwise, I think once they're there, they're gonna be there forever. And honestly, they're not very pretty to look at. They, especially the ones that we've had examples of in the town of Round Lake. Also, I agree with the exemption for the, is not allowed in the platted subdivisions. I don't think that that's a huge issue. Based on the map, I think that people should understand when they're in a platted subdivision. And I agree with the 10 feet height regulation. That's it.
Thank you, man.
Next, I have Linda Zilmer.
Linda Zilmer, 902 Holly Hill Lane, Birchwood, Edgewater property owner. A number of points with the discussion in the draft so far. First of all, I don't think it's appropriate to consider either shipping containers or storage structures as accessory structures if they are going to be the only structure on a piece of land. Accessory implies that there's a principal or primary structure. So in the residential zone district, a garage would be accessory to a home. On an ag parcel, it would be maybe a machine shed for storing implements as an accessory to the farming practice. In forestry, it might be a drying shed for your timber that you've sawed up. I believe that storage containers, the shipping containers and storage structures on vacant lots should be treated similarly as a conditional use, both requiring conditional uses, and no exception language for one accessory structure, because then two, you don't have anything in here for when somebody wants a second one. I think that people come here, they have options. This morning, you just approved a rezone for storage units. We have storage units that are providing income and storage all across the country, or county. I think this needs a lot more work. I don't think it should be framed as accessory structures or shipping containers. It needs its own separate definition. And I appreciate what's being said, and I agree that in platted subdivisions, they're probably not appropriate, but I do think they're only appropriate in RR1 and RR2 because basically they are these, if approved, supporting people habitating on their property. And so I don't believe they belong in forestry district, ag district, industrial, or commercial. So please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
So that's all I have from individuals that sent in a hearing appearance slip, but looks like another individual.
I'll let you talk, Doug. Got 3 minutes.
Douglas Kurzweil, 11055W Arrow Road, Hayward, Wisconsin. We've lost a lot of institutional wisdom or institutional experience here in Saury County. Back in the early 1980s, people were building accessory structures on vacant parcels because they were allowed to under the zoning ordinance. And what we wound up with was people building little garages on the shores of Big Lake Chetek, and by God, a year or two later, they're living in. And that was how the change in the ordinance came about, prohibiting accessory structures on vacant parcels. So basically, Washburn County is now learning something that Saury County learned 40 years ago. And we're in the process of unlearning it, or we've forgotten the lesson that we learned back then. People, again, I've seen a lot of paperwork come through. People with a vacant lot across the road from their home, they want to build a garage on it. There's a process in place by which they can do that, and it seems all they have to do is apply for the variance or whatever it is, and by gosh, they get the permission to do it. So they're not precluded from it. Allowing little structures on vacant parcels is a slippery slope. And as our experience down on White Birch Lake Road has shown us, people will live in shipping containers. Again, these folks down there, they slapped 3 of them together and used a torch to cut some walls out so they can walk from one side of the structure to the other. But by gosh, the standard 8x40, 320 square feet. There's a lot of them tucked back in the woods and off the road and behind the brush in the county right now. And there are going to be people living in them at least for a week or two at a time, hunting seasons, fishing trip, things of that nature. So I think the 3P version is, hopefully that's the worst that you can do. Because by gosh, the other one is even worse than that one. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. Is that it, Jay?
Yeah, that's all I have at this point. I guess I'll just, a couple things I want to bring up. Linda made a good point as far as, what we would call these. And if I don't call them an accessory structure, because an accessory structure is a use other than the primary, what do I call these things? If it's a terminology issue, well, let's correct it. But it seems like I'm looking at sheds and small storage areas, not shipping containers, as part of that exemption in the accessory structure. So if I don't call it an accessory structure, what do I call it? Yeah, a lot of hands.
Linda, go ahead.
Well, I think first of all, it is more than just semantics, and I disagree with the exemption language. I'm thinking both should be conditional use permits. They are storage structures, whether they're a container or a stick-built structure, and they need to be treated separately. And again,
Agreed.
treating them as a conditional use permit in the zone districts that you allow them helps define that. And I don't believe they belong in all zone districts.
So again, with the language that's out there for conditional use permits, why are we bringing those applicants in for a conditional use permit when if we don't have substantial evidence to deny, all the cups are going to get approved? Now, I can understand Jenny's issue with, timeframes, and that could be a condition you put on there. But again, the main intention for that exemption portion was the camping aspect, those camping on vacant land. A lot of people call weekly, wanting a small shed to put their stuff in when they're not there for the summer camping. These people are trying to do the right thing, but yet they're forced to put their lawnmower under the camper and to put their lawn furniture tucked away and throw tarps over some of their stuff that they have there. I saw this as a aesthetically cleansing aspect, that now that stuff wouldn't be scattered throughout the yard, it would be tucked in a shed. Again, that was the main intent, and it's kind of formed into stuff further down the road. And I understand some of the unintended consequences with this, but again, that was the main intention.
So then maybe this really belongs under the camping ordinance, that now, because there are different options for camping, then the camping ordinance needs to be modified to allow for structures to facilitate your camping. But again, I just think it needs to be broken out. I see this going in it, kind of like the decks for the campgrounds. People are going to just build what they want, and next thing you know, it's out of control, and the only way to control it is conditional use permit. And I don't see that this language gives people an option to deny either so much. And I've always questioned the town having the ultimate answer or the ultimate decision in approving or not. I think that's going to be subject to challenge.
Well, my question is that what Jay said is nobody gave him the answer you wanted to hear. What does he call it? Mark, give us a good one.
Linda said it twice and somebody else said it, storage structure.
A storage structure which isn't a shipping container.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not quickly.
I can do better. In an R1, you have a dwelling, and anything else is an outbuilding.
Outbuilding.
I agree with that.
I mean, it is, I think, a little semantic of what you call it, but I get it.
Rebecca, go ahead.
I want to take additional, if anybody else has comments, so I don't have to.
Question, even though we're, Bill Neese, even though we're circling back, basically partially talking about camping, is the fact that the campers have to be removed. So are they gonna take their accessory structure with them at the same time? No. And I will counter one thing. I'll take you right around Sawyer County and I'll show you where somebody has an accessory structure or a shed. And, you know, is it more aesthetic if they have everything in the shed? When the shed gets filled, if you go around and look, it's all around it too. So it's never enough. So I don't think aesthetics do. Is your house like that? Yeah. Okay, Kate.
Go ahead.
Linda Zilmer again, you know, as I'm looking and listening, it's like, there's quite a few of the members of the county's committee that just got done updating the county's comprehensive plan, which the county board approved. And I can pretty much guarantee that the discussions we had to be consistent with the comprehensive plan did not envision our rural Northwood scenery that attracts so many people and provides habitat filled with little storage structures.
Okay, amen.
Okay. Bill, you're not going to like my response. I'll just put that out there first. In looking at 4.26, the language that relates to the exemption not being allowed in platted subdivisions. The legal concern that I have with that provision is essentially the county is attempting to regulate what a person's right may be under Chapter 236 or under subdivision laws via zoning. So not saying that it's not the intent of what this restriction is going to is not inappropriate, and it's not something that the county doesn't necessarily have statutory authority to regulate. I just think that this is not the best form as to how to regulate it. So for example, by having this provision in section 4.26, the county is essentially saying, this is what you can and can't do on a new plat. And I don't think the county has statutory authority to do that within the context of zoning. So again, this section, it could be appropriate in a land division ordinance. But when we're looking at a zoning code, I'm uncomfortable with setting forth a land division or plat restriction solely within the zoning code. And so that's my first concern. I did a case law check very quickly to see if there was any guidance on plat or other subdivision restrictions set forth in a zoning code, and there aren't any. There's some case law that talks about a property owner's right to set forth restrictive covenants or other restrictions on plats that go towards things that would usually be regulated by zoning. But those are set forth by the owner, not by the local unit of government. So again, there's a differentiation again between the county's rights to regulate via the plat process versus the right to regulate via, or the ability to regulate in a zoning code. So that's my primary concern. I think it is appropriate to have the regulation set forth as a conditional use permit. So again, if the county's intent is to ensure that these types of structures are not permitted in platted subdivisions, you can do that by developing the language within a conditional use permit provision of the ordinance. And yes, conditional use permits are subject to 5969(5)(e), which is
What
the,
substantial evidence would you have that they're just not allowed? in a
yeah, so
platted
you'd have,
subdivision?
no, so you'd have to put very specific restrictions in that conditional use permit ordinance. And if, once you have those in there, you have now established the threshold for substantial evidence. So for example, you could include a provision that discusses or addresses a more concentrated residential area or a more concentrated lot area, if you will, hence what a plat is. So you'd have to be a little bit creative in getting all of those points in your conditional use permit ordinance, but I think it can be done. And so to summarize, I think the county can get from point A to point B with what this is intended to do. I just don't think that this is the right vehicle to do it.
This one here is what you're going, and you're talking.
Yeah, I'm talking about, so the language that says that the exemption is not allowed in platted subdivisions. So, as Jay mentioned before, you've got one guy on the side of the road who
It's out, and one guy's in.
exactly, one guy's got a plat, or, family's got a plat, and then across the road, you've got a non-platted. So you're gonna tell this guy, no, you can't have it. Well, why not? Because you're in a platted subdivision. And again, it's Jay as the zoning administrator who would be enforcing that. That just doesn't logically jive. And again, my real concern is the legal basis, obviously, and what the county's authority to do. And I just don't feel comfortable that the county has authority to do what this says it's going to do within the context of zoning. I think you can get there, but you just have to use a different legal mechanism. One other thing, so just moving on to the semantics, if you will, of accessory uses, I think it's a good point that that term accessory structure implies it's accessory to something else. But I would just caution that an accessory use could be accessory to a use that is on vacant land, such as camping or hunting or some other use that is conducted on land. And so that accessory use it's connected to something that is not a structure itself.
So
Keep
are
in
you
mind
saying
that.
that I can keep accessory structure as the term, because it would be implied that there's some other type of use occurring on the property, whether it's camping, hunting, fishing, recreation, and that this structure, shed,
Mhm.
storage container, outbuilding is a accessory structure still?
Yeah, because it could be,
Because I just don't want to get jammed up on the wording if accessory structure isn't the word that should be used as part of this potential amendment.
yeah, and I think, correct.
Okay.
And I think the easiest way to do that would be you can include.
Because we all know what's still implied by it, whatever you call it, we all know what it's applied by. I just don't want to get jammed up by the term that's being used
Sure.
for it.
The easiest way to address that is to define accessory structure. Yeah, and I mean, this is,
And we can add more to that if it further defines the intent that this exemption is trying to create. Again, I just don't want to get jammed on the term and then it spirals something else, because now, yeah. We all know what's implied, right? It's just what is the correct terminology that's used? And if it's something that we have to further define in the definition,
mhm.
I just don't want to get it messy. And it sounds like it might get messier if this exemption, well, they're not called accessory structures, even though I've ever, all sheds, we've always called accessory structures. No, they're not, it's not an accessory structure because it's just on a vacant land and now it's called a storage container, or no, now it's called an outbuilding. It gets messy.
So my
Matt,
other
you got
concern,
something else to say?
my only concern with that too is we have a specific section of the zoning ordinance that does not allow for accessory structures on vacant property. If we're not calling these accessory structures, then somebody's gonna read the zoning ordinance and say, well, the shed is not an accessory structure, so I can put it on my vacant property. So that, the literal interpretation of that would be,
So that would then preclude a accessory structure that is accompanying like a hunting land that has no residence or no underlying building.
correct.
Okay, that's a good point.
Yep.
Because then, the
And-
way that I'm looking at that broader term of accessory structure
Yeah.
doesn't really apply if you don't, can you have them with a conditional use permit or they're just,
It'd be
Only on
the
a 3-year
conditional
time
use for a
frame.
3-year time limit.
okay.
To build a primary dwelling.
Or
Committee, you guys got anything you wanna put in there?
Yeah,
Justin's
Go
been
ahead.
waiting. He's just
I have a few comments. First, with the, so platted subdivision, again, I think, as, Rebecca pointed out, we're not in a position to be, regulating that. We've already limited the accessory structure by size of property. It has to be 20,000 square feet. If you wanted to be more restrictive, then you could just double that to 40,000 square feet. So then it would be, a 1 acre lot or whatever. But I don't think that we should dictate this area here across the road, they can't have one, and then over here they can, because I don't think that's up to us. If it's up to the owner of that area, then that's fine. But, so I think that should be removed completely, this platted subdivision restriction. The 12 or the 10-foot limit on the roof is not enough, because right now at 144 square feet, you could build a 12 by 12. So 12 feet, if you have 8-foot walls, and now your peak can only be 10 foot, that's not enough slope for the snow that we get here. You're talking an 8-degree slope, and that's unsafe, not recommended. So the 10 feet, that needs to be stricken. I don't know what that should be. I would say closer to, at least 12. If you're gonna limit it, which we should, because otherwise, like you said, people are gonna put 2-story. We don't want that. But it needs to be at least 12, if not 14 feet, in my opinion. So I have a problem with saying, I'm all for having accessory structures on vacant land. I think it's a great idea. I think it's long overdue. I think we're in the right area by limiting it in size to 144 square feet. And then we won't have the problems that Washburn County is having, where they have 20 by 30 or whatever their size is, much larger. All of the arguments where people are like, well, if you allow that, then people are gonna move in there. Well, then they're in violation. I mean, if you have an ordinance and this is what it says, and people are going to violate that, then we can't, then that just needs to be enforced. I mean, that's like saying, well, you can't have cars that go over 55 miles an hour, otherwise people are gonna speed. I mean, you can't stop people from breaking the law. Right now, the ordinance says you're not allowed to build an accessory structure, but people are already doing it. So they're already breaking the law. We just have to enforce them. So I think all those arguments about people are gonna do this and they're gonna break the law, that's a moot point, because all we can do is write the ordinance. So I'm all for the shipping container, for accessory structures on vacant land. I'm all for limiting them in size, 144 square feet. But to automatically exclude a metal structure, I don't agree with that. You're already limiting the size to 144 square feet. So you've excluded all 40-foot and all 20-foot shipping containers, which is probably 98% of shipping containers made. They can't, because those are bigger than 144 square feet. But to say I can't put an 8x10 metal building that's more secure and more, so I can lock this because it's a vacant property. I'm gonna be 100 miles away, so I want my equipment protected. It's gonna be more secure than it would be in a plywood, shed. So I don't understand why we're excluding a more secure storage building, structure, outbuilding. I just don't agree with that. You've already limited them in size, so they can't put an 8x20 or an 8x40. But why can't they put in an 8x10 metal building? I don't agree with that. And one more thing. So having the current ordinance says that you can put up to one shipping container on your residential property where you have your existing home. So I don't know why now we can have one shipping container.
Right now, there's nothing in there that would preclude you from having multiples. Because the current administration, or my department, would see them as accessory structures. And there's no limitation on the number of accessory structures you could have. But there was some concerns of the towns.
Okay.
That there's, all of a sudden, people are popping up 3, 4, 5 of them. They have a house.
Right.
And now there's 5 shipping containers, and it's starting to look a little unpleasing aesthetically.
Right. So I think it should still be allowed to put one, and that's a change, right? You can put one. And then if you request more than one, then you need a CUP and town approval. But
And that's kind of how my version 2.1 reads.
But to say that I need town approval and a CUP just to put my one accessory building or one shipping container next to my house, I don't agree with that. If it's more than one, then that's understandable. But just to put the one, I don't think I agree with that. Those are my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks.
Just circling back there, on a 12x12 with 1-foot eaves, 8 feet high on a 612 pitch roof is 11.5 feet. But that's on an 8-foot sidewall. Now, if someone required 9 or 10 feet, now you're looking at more of a 14-foot height on a 612 pitch.
The bottom line is 10 feet is not enough.
10 feet's pretty small. It's pretty short.
Ms. Hassel?
I just would like to propose that we send the first, the first one, the version 2, to the towns to get their written statements and concerns. Because right now we're just taking, I know that Mr. Neese has done his due diligence, but we're just taking his opinions and hard work. But we need to actually get copies from the towns to say what they need from us. If they have any discrepancies with that first version, because the second version is obviously, it was named after Phil, so it's Mr. Neese's, but so with the first one was what we need to send to the townships to get opinions, because we keep going around and around in conversations with hypotheticals, and it drags out our meetings and makes it really annoying to get things done. So let's go with the first version, send it to the townships, get their opinions in writing from their boards, not just hypotheticals, but actually something that we can work with, bring it to the next meeting so we can vote on it. Otherwise, we just keep spinning like we did the camping.
Would you want me to just send out the version, or would you want me to send kind of a questionnaire as far as the differences? So like a questionnaire as, should a shipping container on a lot that contains a primary dwelling require a cup? Yes, no. If we were to allow an exemption for an accessory structure on vacant land, should it be 120, 144? Should an accessory structure on vacant land less than 144 or 122 be allowed as a metal container? Would you like to see more of a questionnaire format, or just send them the version and say, this is what we're looking at potentially proposing? What are your comments, concerns, questions from there?
I think that it would, what I would like to see is both. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever's gonna help you to do your job better and for us to make a decision with the input from the townships. That's what I would like to see.
That's what I was gonna suggest to Ms. Hessel is, can't you send them both, Jay?
Yeah.
You know, but you wanna keep it at the 14, right? That piece, okay. So is that a motion? Okay. Okay, we have a motion on the floor to have Jay send version 2, right? 2.1 to the towns. I'll second that. Ms. Pettit, you got any questions?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay,
For,
go ahead.
so if we're in discussion, so Jay, if I understand this motion correctly, you're going to send version 2.1 to the towns as it reads, but are you also going to include the comments like,
I'm gonna have to have some
Or you're just gonna send that-
summary and comments to them, because if I just send them the version, they're not gonna know what's going on. So I'm gonna have to put some summary to it. Some. Right. I'll kind of do more probably of a hybrid. I've done it before for other ordinances, kind of as a questionnaire and the version presented, and just kind of get a more encompassing comment section back from the towns, which we can mirror into another version. Because now we've at least heard from the towns as opposed to just the individuals that are here today. And maybe the towns are totally against this thing and it just dies. Because ultimately we're gonna need 50% approval of towns anyways.
so what's the timeline then on, it's going to take you a while.
So it would
compile
go out to
this
the
and-
towns would then, if I can get it out soon enough, the towns would hear it in February, and we probably wouldn't get all the responses back, so we probably won't pick this up again until March.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to send version 2.1 to towns. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. 4B, link to the final Muni Code proof, discussion only. Rebecca, you want to comment on anything on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I do have one,
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Aaron,
okay.
but
Sorry, go
Rebecca,
ahead.
you start first.
Okay, yeah, because I may.
Yep.
Thanks, Pat.
Muni code. A great project for the county, a very challenging project in that the county is undertaking consolidation, organization of its ordinances in the history of time, and putting them together. Obviously, one of those is your zoning and land use codes. Zoning and land use codes are treated differently under the statutes because of the approval process. When we first started this undertaking, there was discussion to essentially separate the zoning and land use codes from this whole process. In working with Muni Code, from an organizational standpoint and a big picture standpoint, it was encouraged to include the zoning code. And as we are finalizing this process, and even just from a basic drafting and editing and finalization process, I've come to the conclusion just to carve this out and keep the zoning code and the land use codes separate from the Muni Code project as a whole. So you're still going to have your zoning code as part of the organizational process that Muni Code is undertaking. So it's going to be on the website, it's going to be searchable, it's going to be part of what Muni Code is doing for the county. But in terms of the approval process itself, just split that out. I think that is the best solution when you look at all of the particulars. That's what I would encourage the county to do. So really what that means is if that's what you would like to do, this committee and Jay's office really don't have to worry about, you know, your particular piece of the Muni Code project. And the project has been taken to every committee and every department director to make sure that it encapsulates everything that it needs to, and it does so correctly. If we are indeed going to remove the zoning and land use codes from the project, there's really nothing left for you all to do with respect to that particular section. Does that make sense? I know conceptually, when I've explained it to others, it's hard to, it's sometimes hard to visualize and understand how we're removing the zoning code from the project, but yet it's still going to be contained in the final product. So if you've got questions on that, I'm happy to answer those.
Go ahead, Mr. Betcher.
So, I mean, that sounds like a great idea, one, because it involves a lot less work for a lot of people, namely you and the chairman and Jay, Kathy. And I mean, it just sounds like it makes more sense. But is there any reason why we can't do that, or like at the full board level or the county administrator, they're like, no, you have to include that? Or can we here in this committee make that decision or that recommendation and then bring it to the full board? What's the procedure, I guess? Because it sounds like a good idea to me. I just don't know if we're allowed to go forward with having that removed from the Muni Code.
Yes, absolutely. And this process, I think, is the correct one. You know, to have the discussion at the committee level, and then, you know, when this goes in front of the board, have that same comment made. Now, in terms of the publication of the final draft, and that's one of the other Muni Code challenges is making sure that the proofs that are sent that need to be finalized, we're getting those back in a timely fashion. In discussing this with Andy and how to properly encapsulate that public notice, when the final product is published, it will include the zoning code as it looks now. So it is going to be part of that final package. It's just not going to be subject to the renumbering system and all of that complication. Yeah. But to answer your specific question, yes, this is the proper process, and there's absolutely no legal prohibition on why you could not carve out the zoning code. I suspect when other counties have undertaken this process, I don't know how other counties have treated their zoning code.
Some include it and they've had headaches with it.
Yeah, and one county that I did work with that was involved in this process had already undertaken the task of organizing their ordinances. So then when Muni Code came in, it was a much different process than what Sawyer County is undertaking. So I just think, you know, again, given all of the circumstances, I think this is the best way to go, and I think it's the appropriate process.
I still want it as part of Muni Code and separate, because one of the things that it did benefit my department for is, you know, some of our other ordinances, be it the wind energy ordinance, which is rarely used, but, you know, more specifically, the POUTS ordinance, private onsite wastewater treatment system ordinance, you know, some of that ordinance language had section numbers that had changed, where it was COM and then it was DSPS and then it was SPS. So they move statute numbers around, and every time they move statute numbers around, I have to do an ordinance amendment to fix it. And that's like pulling teeth sometimes. What Muni Code was able to do, though, was rechange all that numbering, the numbering of cited admin code for me in one comprehensive suite. So again, I wanted included in Municode's full packet, but separate from the other county ordinance.
But those are not contained with, those are not contained within the zoning ordinance though, right? They're
No,
contained.
it's a separate standalone.
Yeah, okay. And that's the key, because even if, when we change those, the underlying statutory references, those are going to go in front of the board.
Good.
Because again, those are amendments. We don't have those as part of the zoning code. But just make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, this was really just for discussion, but at least, when is Municode subject to go back? Because it was pulled last night, no?
It was, because we don't have the final proofs back.
Okay.
And the process was intended to be, again, having the discussions in front of the committee, having the discussion in front of the board. And this, again, has been something that's been ongoing for quite some time. And then get the final comments back from the committees, from the directors, from staff, incorporate those into the final proofs, and then bring the final proofs back for approval. And that's where we don't have those yet. So hence, it's delayed another month.
Okay.
But I think we're very close. And again, the thing I love about this project is when it's complete, you are going to have a set of ordinances that has gone through legal review, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
That's a legal term.
I do have one,
Oh, yes.
public
Okay,
hearing
go ahead,
slip on
Jay.
that. Linda
Sorry,
Zimmer.
Linda.
Okay, Linda Zilmer, the Municode website has a nice little video that's less than an hour long, and it provides a good explanation of what a code of ordinance is, how they're structured. And one comment, in not too far into the video, is they make a recommendation that the zoning code can go into the appendix, which is, I think, maybe what you're talking about. It becomes part of the update, but that's what Municode's own video from like a year ago said. But my question from last night's public comment that I didn't make verbally, but I had sent an email to supervisors, was when I looked at the draft of the Municode document right now, all the zoning, it's called a schedule of deposits, but it's your forfeitures and penalties. It's up in the general chapter, whereas all the other ordinance penalties or deposit schedules, like for animal control or miscellaneous, they're within their chapters. So I would think that if the appendix idea for zoning would move it somewhere outside of this codification update, then your schedule of deposits needs to move. And then my question for today is, the zoning ordinance has text and it has maps. So the Municode draft so far had the text language of the zoning ordinance, but where do the maps get put? And then just like the rezone that was approved by county board last night, when there's a map amendment, where does that get updated? And is that part of the Municode process? So those are my public comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Betty, you got any questions?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay. Okay, any other business that may come before this committee or discussion? I just want to thank Rebecca for all the good info she gave this zoning committee and what she did for the county and got us going straight in this zoning committee. And I've learned a lot from you. And I want to wish her well on her new job. You're welcome.
Yeah,
Looks like Kathy has one item.
I just need Stacy and I need Jesse. I need signatures on this resolution for the rezone.
All right.
Just so you don't hurry up and leave me without signatures.
Okay, nothing else. We're adjourned.
Thank you. Everybody have a great weekend.
You too, Miss Bennett. Thank you.
Mhm.